And finally, with agentic, you have the muscles to say like, hey, now we can make that transition and, manage modern IT environments in modern ways.
Don't forget, there's an AI networking summit coming up, and you're invited. So go to the onug.net website to get your tickets now. So, and also if you're on YouTube or Spotify or any of the places where this podcast is being broadcast or streamed, make sure that you hit like or subscribe to it. Thanks.
Assaf Resnick, welcome.
Thank you. Good to see you. How you doing, Nick?
I'm doing really great. I've really been looking forward to like this podcast all week, and I love what you did with BigPanda. And so before we kind of dive into BigPanda, I want to just introduce you to the community. And so if you can share a little bit about your career journey, what kind of made you start BigPanda, but even before that, I know you were in the VC community. I think you were in the VC community for a bit of time, as well. But just give everybody an idea, like what you've been up to.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so in my 20s, spent a good amount of time in and around tech and networking, actually. And my late 20s, early 30s, joined a venture capital company called Sequoia Capital. And that was a very formative time for, me professionally. And it was, I got an opportunity to work with some incredible entrepreneurs, some incredible partners. And, I was very young in my career and, wasn't very hungry and motivated, I guess, in my 20s. And then you get to,
Surely does not sound that way.
Oh, that changed. It changed. You get to work with these amazing folks at a company like Sequoia and entrepreneurs that you work with. And you get to thinking like, I don't think these people are like super smarter than I am or more insightful. They're just a hell of a lot hungrier and more courageous and more focused, And so I kind of caught the bug and started this company, BigPanda. I understood from being at, if you think back to, this is 15 years ago, to the cloud, was a real revolution for venture investing and startup creation, because it meant that, if before you're a young entrepreneur with an idea and you want to bring it to market, let's say it's an internet idea, well, you have to go build a big data center and get a bunch of servers and set up the networks and do all this work. It's $5-10 million just to bring an idea to market and see if it's a good idea, right? And now with cloud, 50 years ago, it brought the cost of taking an idea to market and throwing the spaghetti at the wall, as it will, it's probably way, way down, both in terms of capital and velocity.
Yeah.
And so that was a real revolution of venture investing. You could, seed an idea, test drive it for much, much less time and money. But then I also realized that as those young companies turned into large enterprises, they met success. That cloud tech stack, which is so nimble and agile when you're small, when you're large, suddenly becomes fragmented and siloed and really hard to maintain, because you have, several orders of magnitude more moving parts and velocity of moving parts, and everything's changing, and that's a real problem.
Yeah.
And so saw that, I had a kind of bird's eye view of that and said, hey, I think larger enterprises are going to move to cloud. That's going to happen. And it's going to mean exponential increases in like the complexity and scale of operating those environments. They're going to need help. And so that's how we started. It started off obviously with a lot of machine learning that turns, signal into noise. And, that's been turbocharged over the last 3 years as AI has evolved and said, hey, you can be much more ambitious in your vision.
Yeah. So that's like, yeah, that's awesome. Two thoughts. One is that was really great from not just the venture community, but also for innovation across the world. We're now with AI, it's a totally different, we accelerate that even more. And I'm sure you're really close with that. But I want to go actually rewind a little bit. You
Yeah.
mentioned you in the early part of your career, you started with networking. What'd you do?
I was actually it's funny. My dad was an engineer. I grew up in Silicon Valley.
Mm.
And he always said to me, like, you gotta go learn EECS, electrical engineering, computer science, or you'll be homeless. You'll be homeless. So, so I studied business instead. It wanted nothing to do with tech. I grew up in Cupertino, you know. So I studied business, uh, but then I found myself in the late '90s in tech in Silicon Valley. So, oh, I got to get into it.
Yeah.
And so I took a, very junior position doing like biz dev and marketing at a optical networking startup.
Ah,
Yeah.
go figure.
But then very quickly, the bubble burst and yeah.
Well, that's a great story. Because your dad is almost like me with my kids. Like I kind of like, I have a son and a daughter, and my son did get, he got a kind of a computer engineering degree. Because I got a double E and I got a systems engineering degree, and I've experienced, the opportunity that enables, and not even just that, it's just the way that once you go through one of those programs, you think differently, you view the world differently, and I think it's in a really grounded kind of way. And so I wanted that for my kids, and so I was able to convince my son, who's now doing a startup at a company called Grepper. He's out on the West Coast. But my daughter, she rebelled, and so she's in Medellin, Colombia, doing HR stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, I love it
Look,
both.
these days my kids are young. It's so hard knowing what to encourage them to study because the ground is shifting
Oh yeah,
so quickly,
yeah, yeah,
you know?
yeah, yeah. I think earlier in the week, um, an old friend from the industry had a son who's graduating graduate school, and asked if I would talk with him, and so I did. And I'll tell you what he's telling me was a little scary. It's like his class is having a really hard time finding jobs. It's not just like his school, but it's like he's a BU grad, Boston University grad, and so his friends in Northeastern, Harvard, MIT, it's like it's not a strong year for them, and a lot of it has to do with the hesitation with AI and hiring, new entries into the marketplace. So you're right. It's a really
Oh,
hard.
absolutely. Because if you think of the pecking order of agentic, we're in the world of agentic automation. What has agentic done? It's the big unlock is can go for any industry, from rules-based reasoning or rules-based automation to reasoning-based automation, right?
Mhm.
Complex decision trees, unclear outcomes, and it can navigate those waters really well. And it can look at, massive data sets across, all sorts of data. And so the first kind of bucket of work that gets automated is the low end of the totem pole, where you're taking young folks and you're giving them a framework and you're telling them what to do and how to navigate. And now it's like, well, you can do a lot of that with agentic.
Yeah.
And so, whether it's marketing or legal or engineering, like that whole young layer of folks is really challenged right now because agentic is taking away a lot of those jobs. It's hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Crazy. And one last story, and then I want to get back to our knitting of our chat. But so we're doing some renovation. So I have a contract, from the contractor. It's the hardest time to find an attorney just to review a contract, so a construction contract. So I put it into Claude, asked it, okay, where's the risk? Identify the risk, and then suggest different language. So I read it. I'm like, yeah, pretty reasonable. I'm like, okay, edit the document and red lines it, gets it all ready. And I'm like, wow. I was like, I hope it's good. I don't know if it's really good, but like it identified, I think, the risk that I'm concerned about, going into those contracts, So anyway, so it's not just entry level people, but it's also, people with core skill sets. So let's get to the knitting. All right. And all right. And the knitting is kind of operations. One, I am really kind of in awe with what you've done with BigPanda. Yeah. Yeah. So it's okay. They can come on in and join. We've had people with their dogs, coming in and, and such. So, so BigPanda, one, huge congratulations. Like I think, your valuation, you're not a public company, you're pre-IPO, but like you have this amazing valuation of like a 1.2 billion in a in an operations or a place where basically we're moving into an agentic operations space, and you guys are really leading that charge. So one, congratulations, on that. And you identify essentially a $250 billion operational problem, and really has to do with kind of humans being in the loop. And I think, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but when I kind of look at the problem set, it's the haystack model, right? We essentially have all of these devices that are in the kind of an application's dependency map that are emitting all of these alerts, alarms, logs, and they get centralized into some data lake. And then an incident happens, and it's like somebody throwing a needle into that haystack and then saying, go find it, and there's just a lot that needs to be sorted out there. And it's all human oriented. So is that kind of the problem that you're describing?
Yeah, I mean, very much so. I mean, if you think of a modern large enterprise, it's not one very slow moving monolithic environment. It's now become highly modularized, and code is moving faster with CI/CD, and infrastructure components are moving faster with infrastructure as code. And so you can think about it as a bit of a Jenga tower, right?
Yeah.
And it has good ramifications because you can take out modules and put in and you can, reshape it, and it's very agile. But it takes a lot of care and feeding, and the connection between the moving parts are not easy to intuit, and they're fast moving. And so against that kind of fast moving Jenga tower, folks are throwing humans. And like you said, there's about $250 billion worth of salaries just in IT operations that tend to kind of be bookended into two buckets of people. One is your low end kind of level one, what used to be called the network operations center.
Yeah.
But now it's the full stack operations center, because it's not just about the network, it's about the full stack. But it's, an army of young engineers that have to kind of drink from the fire hose of your observability, figuring out what is the health of my 30,000 components and endpoints, and how do I connect the dots to see if anything really bad is about to happen. And that's super broken, super slow. A lot of it has been outsourced to, faraway time zones. And so you have these kind of revolving door of young engineers where the average attrition rate is every 7 months they're turning over. So you get these young folks that don't know your business, don't really know your infrastructure. Hold on.
Hey.
What? No. This is my car. And so you have this.
Hi.
You want to say hi?
Hi.
You have this revolving door of young engineers who don't really know your environment, and they're supposed to get things done in a 15-minute SLA, but you're complex. They don't have a lot of muscle memory, so it takes them an hour and a half. And this is a really reactive way to run your IT ops.
Yeah.
And then the other bookend is when you're actually have a real live incident. P1, you're a large airline, your fleet is grounded. At that point, you're calling in 200 of your most expensive people, right? Your major managers and your network specialists and your application specialists, and they're all adding a little bit of knowledge from their very deep silo into the pot and trying to figure out, what's really happening. And so it's a super reactive and inefficient way to run your business.
Yeah.
And now with agentic capabilities, it's a really interesting application of that to IT operations, because it can take in very large data sets. It can reason across silos. And it can really say, hey, for 30 years, as the tech stack has been exploding in complexity and velocity and scale, the reaction was throw more and more humans at the problem.
Yeah.
Now it's no, AI can actually make some
Help
really
solve
big
these.
strides.
No, it's actually a really great perspective. It really kind of resonates, with where we've kind of been dealing with, like within the ONU community for the longest time. So a couple of data points that you mentioned that I haven't heard before. The 7-month churn, that's huge, because it takes so long to find engineers. She's good, by the way. Don't worry. We're all parents and we all love it. So it's like we're really good. So there's the 7-month, kind of churn, which is difficult to manage. Being offshoring that is also another challenge. And I think what you're basically saying is that there are major blind spots in something that is so core to your business, which is your infrastructure. So how do you manage that, and how do you kind of like keep it, up and running, and so that that you don't have these major outages that are going to affect your customer loyalty and tarnish your brand, and just keep the brand promise alive, and maintain that outcome. So I think that's really interesting. And then so if we look at it, then we mentioned the amount of alerts, and that's only going to increase as we move towards. We're talking about agentic into the full stack operations centers, but agentic is obviously being considered to being deployed widely all across the enterprise. I think once we have a really good understanding and tools around controls and guardrails and security, we'll see this really proliferate at a speed that I don't think anyone is ready for. Like, I think, it's almost like, Assaf, you might remember this, like the Novell Network days, right? It's like you would have like business units that would just basically be putting these Novell servers just to share print servers and file servers. And then it grew so fast that all of a sudden IT groups they were like, what is this? And how do we get our hands around it? And that's going to happen orders of magnitude faster,
It is happening.
Yeah. Well, I think like in the enterprise, there's a lot of hesitation, especially with OpenClaw. NemoClaw, I think, is something that there's a lot of interest, and because it has the guardrails, but it's just new. Code writing, for sure, that is done. Like many in our community are pausing their enterprise software purchases, or they're reviewing them, as their dev teams are now just writing code, to kind of like automate their business. So I think there's kind of like the writing of the code with AI tools, but then there's the agentic piece. I think the agentic piece is still, you might have different perspective, than I have, but I think it's still being held back because of security. Is my perspective.
Yeah, interesting. Look, there's a lot to unpack in what you just said.
Yeah, sorry.
There's how do you unpack the security side, and then how do you deal with that data tsunami?
Yeah.
Right. Because so let's start with the data tsunami side. There is, to understand what's going on across your landscape of large enterprises, like this tsunami of observability data across your servers, your network, and your applications and your database. Just to understand, what's the customer experience? Am I giving a good quality of service to my customers?
Yeah.
And that's already eclipsed human scalability. But then it's like, hey, for a human that actually is looking at a potential issue, potential incident, there's 17 other data points they need to go get, right? Like, hey, is this having ramifications to my customer? If so, are they calling my service desk? Have I seen an issue like this before? And if so, what did I do? Have we ever talked about this in a bridge call in the past? Is there a knowledge base article around this? Are there some release notes around what's going on? And so piecing together that spider web of data is also really, really hard for a human because it's buried in all sorts of places in many systems they don't even have password access to.
Yeah.
And that's why we got to get these kind of bridge calls from Hal. So one of the things that, to get everyone on the same phone call, trying to piece together information. And so one of the promises of AI or agentic is it can actually look across all of those silos and not just take in the data scale, but take in data, complexity and heterogeneity at a scale that just humans can't do.
Yeah, totally with
Then there's the security aspect of that, which is, I think a lot of enterprise boards right now are a bit schizophrenic. On the one hand, it's like, we got to move fast on AI. We got to leverage that as our competitive advantage or we're going to get lapped.
Right.
So that's a big force. On the other hand, it's, hey, don't do anything dangerous or stupid or embarrassing.
I know.
Right?
Don't put us in the news for all the wrong reasons.
Don't put us in the news for all the wrong reasons. Totally. And so I think folks are learning to navigate that. I think for a lot of enterprises, they're probably now their legal teams and their AI council are in their third or fourth cycle of procurement. And so folks are starting to get a little bit, less like the deer in the headlights and starting to get some process. And so approval cycles, security cycles happening a little bit faster. This is very similar to what happened in public cloud 15 years ago. Yeah. It was scary and new. Today, 15 years later, it's standard and rote.
Yeah.
That's going to take time.
Yeah. It's interesting. Earlier in the week, I had a meeting with a CISO from a Fortune 50 company, and we were talking about this exact issue. And and he's like, he is actually, he has two concerns.
Okay.
I'm sure he has more, but that kind of.
He's a CISO. He doesn't have to worry about a lot of things. Life is easy when you're a CISO. No threat vectors. Yeah.
Well, the two things that he voiced, I'm not sure where they are on his priorities of every day, is that when he's presenting to his board, they want to go. And he's worried about being, in the news for all the wrong reasons. So he's worried if he doesn't go fast enough, his job could be on the line. Literally, and he's the CISO, and then the other thing is, how do I get my staff trained and skilled so that they can actually operate in this new world, and I think so those are kind of like that kind of, bookmarks. He's getting pressure from on top to go fast, take advantage of the technology. He knows that he's not totally comfortable, yet with it. And he doesn't have the skills staff to actually make it happen, or that he's comfortable with making it happen. So I think that's, that kind of talks to like the point that you were just, raising, where, boards are move fast, really make this happen. And I think the folks who are really responsible for it are like, okay, how do I do that, now? And so they're really kind of looking for solutions and answers, right?
Yeah, you really want, like, we just had our last week, we had our annual customer events. We had like 100 and something customers, world's largest enterprises all come together. And it was a very kind of interesting mix of, visioning what life can look like in 2 or 3 years,
Yeah.
coupled with the pragmatic necessity of working in a real world, large, heavily regulated industry where, risk is a thing. And so how do you navigate towards the art of the possible while staying very compliant and very safe? And,
Yeah.
that's it's part of the interesting part of this moment.
Yeah.
There's
I
so much
think,
promise. It's got to be grounded in your reality of
yeah.
availability and security and all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, we were talking, I think part of that is the agentic piece, right? So, you know, I guess in the operations side, and most like in the folks within the internet community on their operations piece, that's really where they're applying AI and also really looking at agentic. So where are you seeing maybe in that vision, that like the art of the possible, kind of where agentic is starting to play a role?
Yeah. I think 3 areas for us within the world of agentic of IT operations. One is just really move the needle on preventing issues from happening in the first place. Operations is a super reactive muscle, right?
Yeah.
And you've built out that entire operation stack to respond really well, really quickly to when things happen. And you try to, and you try to do postmortems and learn from mistakes to prevent them in the future. But people are busy because,
Yeah.
there's always fires to fight, and the engineers want to go back to building stuff. They don't want to go write run books. And so with AI, the first thing you can do is actually say, no, we can really move the needle on prevention. You can look at, all the risk factors that bring down an enterprise, changes to code, changes to infrastructure, changes to security, all sorts of things. Lots of people changing lots of things, any one of which may bring you down. And suddenly with AI, you can do a whole new level of, risk assessment and kind of change predictive capabilities and really help, prevent unforced errors. That's one.
Yeah.
2 is around that whole layer of level 1 operations that folks have primarily brought, outsourced and offshore to this labor environment where, people are trading and churning all the time and saying, hey, no, there's a much better way. Instead of spending, $20 million on an offshored L1, hey, that's not really bringing you great ROI, that you make lots of mistakes, end up escalating to your most expensive people anyway. How do you just say, hey, no, we can completely replace that with agentic L1 and give you a vision of like, hey, in 2 years, 3 years, that can truly be a driverless knock. So that's 2 of what we do. And then number 3 is, hey, when you do have real big issues and you're bringing in your most experienced, your most expensive people, how do you turbocharge the work of those people to do deep investigation and to thread together the investigation of 30 different experts into a holistic understanding? So we can bring in and say, when you're having a big issue, we're going to bring in a swarm of our agentic experts. We're going to bring in the network admin and the DBA and the person that owns, this specific application and your cloud expert. We're going to bring in, 30 or 40 of our agentic experts that have been trained by your actual human experts.
Yeah.
And they're going to swarm and do deep investigative work into any situation.
Yeah.
So that's kind of our vision. Prevent those issues from happening in the first place.
Yeah.
Fully automate your L1 operations and then turbocharge your ability to do kind of major incident management.
Yeah. Excellent. So you're kind of just totally blowing away the haystack, and that needle that needs to be found, in that haystack. So love it. So one of the biggest problems, like when you do have an incident, and you've been alluding to this, is getting everybody on the same page, that are in different domains and have different domain responsibility. So I think the more that you can kind of understand how your system, your infrastructure is starting to go off baseline and starting to identify anomalies before they actually turn into incidences is a huge save, right? So it increases the reliability. You also have a cost advantage around L1 engineering, and staff, and so you have kind of a more productive, set of individuals. And then when something does happen, bring out the ninjas, and allow the ninjas or the lobsters, to
Bring out
to
the
really,
ninjas. Yes.
to really kind of like dissect this and get to root cause quickly and fix. That's a really good model. I haven't heard that model. That makes a
Yeah,
lot of
and
sense.
it's a rethinking of IT operations that has been this like super, manual kind of muscle for 40 years that, just hasn't kept up with modern cloud-based infrastructure.
Mm.
And finally with agentic, you have the muscles to say like, hey, now we can make that transition and, manage modern IT environments in modern ways.
Yeah. So how does BigPanda operationalize that? So like what, I'm sure you're developing agents, very specific, to your products and to operations. But so like how do you productize it?
Yeah. So it starts by, there's kind of two layers to our vision. One is specific agents for specific roles, right? It's a platform of agents. So a specific role may be preventing incidents, one automation, an SRE agent that's actually 30 different agents, a network agent and a DBA specialist and all sorts of specialists. And so you have to be really good at productizing those agents. Then the other layer beneath that is a shared platform, a shared knowledge graph that says, hey, it's not just about the skills of that specific agent or this team of agents. It's about tapping into the broad knowledge graph across a large enterprise and bringing all the data that a human team of operators might need, and it's in their knowledge books and their run books and their ticketing, ITSM history, and it's in the observability feed, and they may chat, on Slack with a few other folks. They may look at, has this happened in the past? All that knowledge that today needs to be found and processed manually, because it lives in all sorts of places and all sorts of different structures. You can now actually create this kind of IT knowledge graph that encapsulates all of that and then gives all those individual agents the ability to tap into that. So that lets you do kind of two things. One is lets you tap into siloed knowledge very, very quickly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And two is it lets the entire organization get better every day. Right? So your major incident agent just handled a major incident, and we learned something that's going to make prevention smarter. And so it's really around, unsiloing data, and it's also around circulating, not learning and circulating those learnings across your entire team of agents.
Yeah, really, the concept that's coming to my mind as you're talking, Assaf, is that the infrastructure is actually becoming alive. It's not this deterministic, system where we set all these preconditions, and then whenever something happens outside of those conditions, all these alerts and alarms go off, and people got to scurry around and try to figure it out. But actually, I think what we're doing and what you're enabling here is for the infrastructure to start thinking, identifying how these, it might be drifting into some area, and then have the infrastructure actually address that before it becomes a major incident. And when it does become a major incident, then we have these really specialized agents that can come, root cause, fix a problem, but then also regressive, like being kind of like feeding into a knowledge base or a graph, that constantly updates the kind of information that is made up of the infrastructure that all these agents can now learn from, utilize, as time goes on. So that's the way I'm kind of thinking about what you guys
AKA reasoning. Because up until now, all that kind of whatever could be automated around keeping your entire stack running was, like you said, highly deterministic. So it would only work for known problems where I know the trigger and I know the response and I can code that manually. And then that creates rules and orchestration. You're talking about, hey, there's a novel situation. We've never seen it before. How do I reason my way through a really complex decision tree, all sorts of inputs that may conflict with one another, and how do I actually not just follow set rules that someone has written? It's like, how do I actually reason my way through a situation?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, is that the definition of alive? Maybe.
Yeah.
It's certainly the definition of, ability to reason.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, putting intelligence really into the infrastructure so that it can heal itself, and, I think that's huge. And, so let's project out in terms of the art of the possible, like, what do you think, in the next 3 to 5 years, what might kind of full stack operation centers or agentic operation centers kind of look like,
So it'll look a lot less like, hey, I've got 300 L1 operator. Like, let's just think of the L1 layer. I got a lot less like I have 300 L1 operators that I'm outsourcing to someone else. It'll look more like I've got 3 or 4 SREs that are managing a fleet of agents. They're on my payroll. They have deep awareness of my customers and my business and deep relationships with everyone else across the stack. So that's on the L1 side. Then on the kind of agentic MIM and SRE, it'll be around, hey, those folks want to build. Your SREs want to build. They don't want to firefight. So it's like, how can we get all their knowledge and the things they know and their muscle memory and their tribal knowledge? How can I create an agent that they build and they maintain that lets them bottle up all their smarts and their experience in a way that lets them handle those fires when they happen really well and give me more time to do what I really want to do, just build and innovate.
Yeah.
And so it's going to have profound ramifications to what an enterprise IT org chart will look like. It'll look like a lot less operators and a lot more SREs.
Yeah. Yeah. And also it's like, it kind of puts the end to DevOps, because the ops piece goes away, and it's more dev, than it is actually ops, which I think everyone would be really happy about, frankly.
Yeah, because those guys want to dev, they want to build, they don't want to operate.
That's right.
And so, but they have tribal knowledge that is irreplaceable. It's like, well, no, how do I take what's in my head, turn it into, train the agent?
Yeah. I'm not sure who came up with this idea of DevOps. It's like, are you kidding me? I got to build and I got to manage the thing too. It's like.
Anyway, look, the Phoenix project.
The Gene. Yeah, we can blame Gene for DevOps. Yeah. Well, anyway, I don't want to talk badly about DevOps. But I just did. So anyway.
Well, I mean, the concept of DevOps makes sense. You build it, you own it.
Well,
But how do I use the AI? How to use agentic AI to leverage the operations part? You still have operational ownership over the things you build, and it better work and it better deliver great business outcomes to your customers. It's just you don't have to spend so much time fighting fires.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Okay. All right. Great. So I think we're getting kind of close, to the end. But actually, it's a really great future for how we kind of manage operations and how it becomes automated, contributes to reliability, contributes to the brand and the business or the user experience of that brand for that company as well. So really, congrats, great vision, and you guys have been killing it, as well. And really happy to have you as part of the community also. But one thing, so you guys are participating this year within the summit, the AI Networking Summit. So you're doing,
Awesome.
so there's a session that you guys are doing on why agents fail, without operational memory. You want to talk a little bit about that? But I think you kind of alluded to it like in our discussion, but you want to expand at all
Well,
on
I
that?
mean, it's the concept of, uh, you wouldn't hire a human and not give them access to your critical systems and the knowledge they need to get situational awareness. And
Mhm.
so it's the exact same thing with agents, which is you have to really invest in building out a knowledge graph that can grant the agent the ability to see across your environment, much like a human would.
Yeah.
And once they do that, like your ability to bring, let me put it this way, let me step back. If you think of how I'm in a large enterprise, how can I use agentic AI to my competitive advantage? Well, the AI layer today is actually fairly commoditized, right? You've got,
Mhm.
OpenAI and, and Claude and lots of other LLM vendors that are kind of leapfrogging each other. And, there's 5 or 6 leaders. And so you can pick and choose. So that layer and everyone has access to those, right?
Yeah.
And so what's the real competitive advantage you can bring is how do I operationalize all of my enterprise knowledge that's unique to me? And
Mm.
how do I get all that up to the table to let, the LLM give it access to the unique things that only I can see?
Yeah.
And the better organizations get at building out that knowledge graph
Yeah.
for an AI driven use case, the better results you'll get from your agents.
Yeah. And well, I'm sure like, if, is this actually a product that you guys are, you know, providing or planning on providing?
So it's a foundation to all of our products. So we sell multiple agents, depending on if it's an L1 agent or an SRE agent or a prevention agent. All of them tap into the same IT knowledge graph. So
Mm.
however you start, you can come to us and buy just one thing, or you can buy the whole platform. Either way, you're starting to see that knowledge graph, and every
I see.
interaction makes that knowledge graph smarter. So it's not
Yeah.
so much a product that we sell as much as a foundational layer of all of our products.
Yeah. Because you can see like how this can expand beyond operations, IT operations,
Totally.
and to business operations, so it's like, what's happened, like the biggest source of truth is networking data, right? So, being able to see, where customers are coming and where they're going, the experiences that they're having, um, how various different other parts of the business are using their agents to automate their workflows, how there's a triangulation, of what's happening in IT and how users are utilizing that infrastructure and how other parts of the business are actually, building products that sell. Um,
I like that
it's
word triangulation. And
mm,
so one of the things that enterprises really need to do is, many of them are locked into like business strategic relationships with large software vendors.
yeah.
A lot of those software vendors are now understanding like, wait, I should try to restrict the ability to share my data outside of my walled gardens. And
Mm,
CIOs really need to resist that. And they need to make sure that whatever business relationships they have with their large, SaaS vendors, it's such that, hey, this is my data,
mm,
my enterprise data. I want to keep it open to a broad kind of layer of agents so that they can triangulate across systems in much the way humans do. And so that's a real thing that CIOs, as they get into renewal cycles where they're strategic vendors, make sure that uh, you're commercializing in such a way that this is your data. You can take it outside of the walled gardens of this vendor. You can use it for your agentic knowledge graph.
yeah. Great
Very
point.
important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great point. Asap, I think that's a great place to end it. This has really been so great, so nice to meet you, and to meet your daughter, as well. So that was like that was special. Really enjoyed that.
You remember,
Um,
well, like five, no, this is like 7 years ago before COVID, there was this news broadcaster on CNN or BBC. I don't remember which one. And his son came into the room and everyone kind of freaked out. It was so funny. It came in during a news broadcast, and then COVID is like, yeah, whatever. My dog's coming in, my kids are coming in, and like change kind of how things work.
It doesn't matter. As you get older, these things don't like, they're actually more welcoming, than anything. And it was funny because we had a podcast with another, another person in the industry. We were talking about this is that, as a dad or as a parent, really, it doesn't matter if you're mom or dad, but as a parent, like now, like my kids are grown, and they're off, in their careers. The moments where they would, like my kids, I'm sure the same thing with yours. They want to play with you, but you're working and you're conflicted, and you can get a little frustrated with that.
Doing a podcast.
Yeah. Those are the most wonderful moments, with your kids, because they want to be with you. And so, anyway, congrats. You look like a great dad.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And you built a good, and you built a great company too. So, hopefully we'll see you in May in Dallas. If not in Dallas, we'll see you in New York. Hopefully.
Right on.
Okay. Assaf, thank you so much.
Thank you.